Okay. Let's give it 10 seconds. I wish we had a theme song. Okay.
Like
Hi, everybody.
I know. Dun, dun, dun.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dani.
And I'm Nicole.
And welcome to another live discussion with Fave. For those of you that aren't familiar, Fave is an app where armies can, in summary, connect with other armies. Meant to be a safe place for us. Here armies can gush over BTS, express themselves in a variety of ways, get and share tips, find BTS related events near them, and make new army connections. Best part is that you get rewarded for being a fan. So currently, we're helping armies celebrate Proof comeback, but we can talk about that towards the end. For now, make sure to follow Fave for Fans on Instagram and Twitter and download the app. More information will be in the bio below. But Nicole, would you like to introduce our guest today?
Of course. Daezy and Delilah are back. Daezy is a 2016 army that joined the Purple Train after stumbling across lyric videos of the Cypher series on YouTube. In January 2019, she created a group chat on Twitter for university psychology majors, where she became close friends with Delilah. Delilah herself became an army amid run promotions after coming across Bangtan's dope music video. After making a BTS Twitter account in December of 2018, she soon joined a group chat created by Daezy for psychology college majors. Fast forward a few years, Delilah officially turned tired of the toxic and polarized nature of discussions on Twitter, and knowing Daezy felt the same, brought up the idea to create a podcast where they could discuss internal fandom issues beyond simple tweeting.
So basically, they were perfect for this discussion. So please welcome back Daezy and Delilah. Woo! Woo! Got anything to say, ladies?
Just thanks for having us. The first time was really fun, and the fact that you guys picked us to talk about this, and there's a lot to talk about. We feel special and honored, and we're ready to just get into it.
Yeah, it's just really exciting to be back here, and I'm just really looking forward to the discussions that we're going to have today because we had so much of a good time last time, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it, guys. And just so our listeners know, your latest discussion on your podcast, Talk with Army, was so in tune with what not only Nicole and me really wanted to address, but plenty of other fans have been curious about too, which tells us that this is something that people really want clarity on.
Right. So for people who may be watching and may not know our podcast, we recently dropped an episode, I believe last week, and it was about the hyperconsumption of media within the K-pop industry. And so, a little bit of what we talked about in that episode is just how, because of the fast-paced nature of the industry, you have all these fans who are consuming this content from their favorite groups at such a rapid pace that it gets to the point where they're almost like desensitized, where they think they treat it as like a standard, where it's kind of normal for them for idols to be putting out this much content. And so, when idols decide to take a break and maybe step away from some things that may be stressful or, events that may overwork them, then suddenly these fans will think that they're not getting enough content when in reality, it's pretty normal outside of the K-pop industry to be, for example, releasing one album every 2 years. That's quite normal in the Western hemisphere. But in the K-pop industry, it's like if you're not putting out like 2 comebacks a year every single year, then people treat that as abnormal, and you're most likely to get swept under the rug and just kind of consumed by all these other groups who are doing way more than you in the industry.
No, absolutely. Actually, our podcast today is just going to be basically a summary of what these ladies talk about on their podcast. So if you really want the nitty-gritty details of not only why maybe armies that have been around for a while think and feel a certain way, they're the ones that are going to explain to you why. Right, Nicole?
Exactly.
A lot's been happening as of this week, right?
Yeah. Within a few days, the Anthology Album was announced, and our group chat was so filled up with. We were discussing all the negativity floating around all these announcements and how it seems to come from a place of inexperience from like one side and like this lack of humility on the other.
Yeah, it was actually Nicole who proposed the discussion, and I said, I told y'all, but we need some heavy hitters who aren't afraid to tell it how it is. And can you guys guess who we chose?
Yes.
So I wonder who it is. I don't know.
So just to start, I think we should hit topics in order that it kind of unfolded after Proof was announced. Starting with, I think, and I think you guys would agree, one of the biggest criticism floating on Twitter. Nicole, if you could you please give us your best impression of an upset fan about an anthology album? Go.
Of course. Why is BTS only releasing 3 new songs? I want more music.
Ladies?
Oh my goodness.
I thought that was a good impression.
I know. Where's her Oscar?
But you know what? I mean, from one perspective, I do get it. Maybe like an anthology album isn't the same experience as, you know, when Beef released or when Map of the Soul 7 released, and people, you know, they want that sort of album experience. But what I don't think people realize is that when it comes to BTS, you are still going to get that same album experience. The way, I mean, just look at Dynamite, for example. Dynamite was one single, but every single performance for Dynamite was different, whether it was the stage or whether it was the instrumental mixing. They changed it up and they did something different for every Dynamite performance. And it was absolutely crazy. And so I think that even if we are getting, you know, just 3 new songs, they're going to do a lot with that. I mean, and this, I don't understand also what's the difference between releasing 2-3 new songs with an anthology and releasing 2-3 new songs with like a repackage. Because no one complained when You Never Walk Alone is released. Oh, we're only getting Spring Day and Not Today. We're only getting 2 songs. It's just a repackage. It's not a real comeback. People didn't say that. But for some reason, when it comes to an anthology album, something that BTS, you know, we want to tell our story, and you know, we want to organize it in a way that, you know, showcases how we came to be to this place, plus including a few new songs. People are treating it as like it's just a cash grab, that it's not special. And I think that's really I don't know, I think that's treating BTS with it's treating BTS with a lack of respect. I feel like if you know BTS, then you should know better than to think that this is just some cash grab. I think that's a really ingenuine approach to this.
Right. And
go ahead.
Oh yeah. What I was gonna say is, you know, on top of that, you know, you also had things like The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, Young Forever, and you know, with that came only, what was it, Fire, Save Me, and Young Forever, and people treat HYYH as like the pinnacle of BTS's success. Like, you know, those ex-army to anti-pipeline thingies where, you know, you have those people who've come out of the fandom and say, oh, you know, their last good album was The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, or their last good album was Before Love Yourself. And it's like, well, those same albums, you had the same exact type of compilations, and yet you never had this outrage the same way that people are, you know, exhibiting for this anthology album. And so it really just goes to show you how people continuously move the goalposts. And I feel like that was like kind of an episode that we made, like an episode I did that we may have wanted to toy with, where, you know, we talk about how when it comes to the way that people look at their music, people continuously move the goalposts, where you will have somebody who will completely just absolutely rag on a new album release and then compare it to a previous release. But then that same previous release that they're saying was the better version of BTS, at the time that that previous release was first announced, these same people were ragging on it. So it's like you have these people who show such hypocritical standards to their music, where you will trash something, but then when something new comes out, you're praising that same thing that you trashed in comparison to the new releases. So it just goes to show you that it's really not the music that's the problem. There's just a completely different mindset that they have when they're consuming BTS content. And I just really don't like it at all.
I completely agree. I kind of want you guys' opinion on something that Nicole actually mentioned, because it is frustrating for me, and I would imagine a lot of people, when they see someone who's been around long enough to, I guess, quote unquote, know better, than to be so critical in that type of way. But she did mention that we've gotten bigger, especially when the pandemic started. And at least from what I've seen, aside from the young people who, you know, they're in their own category, right? And I mean, like the young folk. Aside from them, there are the people more around our age that maybe became an army during the pandemic. And at least to me, I guess I can only speak for myself. What I've seen is you can truly see maybe the inexperience or sadly, even the lack of humility in this, because you were talking, for example, about people claiming that that Hype or Big Hit is just being money hungry. And it's like they're not familiar with what we're used to. You got any like opinions or even tips regarding being an experience in that case?
Yeah, in terms of that, you can definitely see that difference because obviously people who came in during the pandemic were not able to experience the type of comeback season that we had because, aside from B in late 2020, there was that huge gap in between, B and Proof that's coming up like literally in a week. And so because of that, they missed out on a lot of things such as like comeback promotion, concept photos, all this kind of stuff. Even though we did get that with the English singles, it obviously when it's like an album release, it's just something completely different. They didn't get any type of music show performances either. So there's a lot that they did miss out on. And so when you have this whole album release now, I feel like there's just this, inexperience with what is to be expected because they just haven't gone through it before. And that's understandable. Although I feel like my issue is those people who may be new and who may be inexperienced and they're trying to speak over fans who've been here for a long time, know what to expect, know how to treat BTS's music. And so I feel like this disconnect has been causing a little bit of conflicts lately on the timeline. And I feel like that's what has really been sparking a lot of discussion as of late.
In other words, they're talking more than they should. Yes, Delilah?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of people, we've said this a lot before, but I think maybe a lot of new people don't really understand what it means for us. Like people have been here for a long time and we say we're an army. Some people might say, oh yeah, they're an army, but they like BTS maybe on a surface level. They haven't spent the time to really just listen to what they say and engage with their music critically. And engaging with their music critically is something that BTS wants us to do and they expect armies to do. And the fact that people get defensive over that and people get defensive and say, oh, well, I could still be a fan and not have to, know all the lyrics, or I can still be a fan and, not know every song. But when I'm going on TikTok and I see people don't even know track 1 Intro Persona, and that's not an old album. It's like, I mean, even if you just hit shuffle on Spotify, like you should at least come by these songs by accident. And I think it's fine for people to not be armies and just be casual listeners of BTS. But if you're going to say you're an army, you should be aware of the history that comes with it and why BTS is here today and how they got here. And if if you're not willing to bother learning about that, then I mean, of course, people are going to, not see you as, they're going to disregard your opinion, or they're going to clash with you a lot online. And you shouldn't be surprised. There's this big surprise. And then, armies, suddenly, oh, now this fandom is like toxic because they're like gatekeeping. And it's like wanting you to understand what BTS are talking about in their music because it's meaningful to BTS and therefore it's meaningful to us. It's not gatekeeping. I just think that like when people have, been here for a while and they know and they understand and they trust and believe in BTS, we can see when newer people, they don't have that same belief or trust in BTS. Like we can see that, we can feel that. And so for when we just want to, guide and direct people, people just get defensive over it. And And it just creates this really frustrating atmosphere on Twitter that now there's like, new armies don't know anything, and like they're blah 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 blah, and old armies are they're not welcoming enough, and which is like two extremes of the sides, and there has to be a balance. And I think right now we're struggling to find that balance.
Right.
Because I guess I was just really disappointed because we got a lot of people when there's so many pandemic armies that needed BTS when they showed up. And I'm very grateful to have Nicole because she's the pandemic army. But her attitude about it is much more positive and different from people that I've seen. I don't know how else to say it, but to just say it, people that basically got really popular during the pandemic because they became an army, if that makes sense. It's very disappointed, not only to me, I would imagine all of us who thought that someone was on the right path. And, they talk about proof is explained on Twitter, and I wouldn't call this a new album. But yeah, I guess stay positive or whatever, or even just to be vague, because we're not trying to get sued here, but there was one that was really big and was like, why are we getting an album with songs of an album that we already have? And that would have been fine until she hit it with, I'm so annoyed. It's like, and then you have Nicole here like, whoa, Anthology.
Super excited.
I know. So many people were looking at the glass half empty, and it was so disappointing to see. Although at the same time, something that I am thankful for is, this is where kind of like the age demographic of ARMY kicks in, where obviously you have pretty much the majority of the fandom that is above the age of 18. And so a lot of us, especially because a lot of us are solely just armies, like in the context of K-pop, like a lot of us are just armies and part of no other fandom. So, you have all these people who grew up listening to all these other acts that are also their favorite artists, like other legendary Western acts. And so when they hear the word anthology album, it's not some new vocabulary, and it's not like, oh, this is stupid. Everybody knows what it is, because it's like, oh, I listen to this artist, they put out this anthology album, how many years ago. This is what it means. You have those sides of the fandom who are educating the people who may not be familiar with what an anthology album is, because you had some people saying, oh, there's no point in this if they're just going to be re-releasing songs that we've already heard before, when people have to step in and explain what an anthology album is, why it's different from a compilation album. I feel like if we didn't have that, like the entire fandom would have imploded like 3 weeks ago.
Right.
That's such an excellent point. I honestly think that my disappointment comes from people who should be grown enough to have a better attitude about this and should know what an anthology album is. But personal experience, I'm not going to get y'all. I mean, personal thing, I'm not going to get any of y'all in trouble. But it gives me I'm going to be edgy.
It does.
Yes, it gives you can tell a lot of people use Twitter in a way to fulfill their mean girl fantasy. That, they want to be, Regina George and, be the popular girl because they weren't that in school. And so they live vicariously through, I don't know, quote unquote, whatever idol profile picture. On Twitter, and it's obvious. Like some people, I think there's some people who I have seen, express disappointment, but like not in I'm disappointed in the boys, or I'm disappointed in just like the album in general, but I'm more disappointed in myself for like setting certain expectations when I should have been like more open-minded. I feel like there's some people who are like, oh, I had an expectation and it wasn't met, but that's still okay. And then there's some people that are like, oh, I have these expectations and they need to be met, or else if whatever I expected isn't what BTS planned, then suddenly that means that the album isn't worth it.
Right. And it's just so saddening to see some people act like that. And I have talked about this on my main account before, how, BTS are some of the only artists I know where in between album releases, they're still releasing so much music. Like, I think people had tallied it up to like maybe like 20 or 21 songs in between B and, you know, Proof that's coming out now. And, you know, who knows, maybe because it's Festa season, we may even get like a song before that. Nobody knows what's going to happen in this next week leading up to the album release. And on top of that, we all know now that there's going to be 2 unreleased songs on CD3. So we're actually getting 5 new tracks. And the fact that people are still acting like BTS literally just did absolutely nothing in the time it took for them to release this album, I feel is just so unfair to their work ethic. It's so unfair to the amount of effort they've been putting into this, the amount of care they've put into this album. The fact that they trust us enough to be able to show their unfinished work to us in this anthology album. There's 9 whole demos on that. It's not easy to show people your unfinished work, especially when a lot of these demos have the finished versions of the track in the same exact album. So, you know, for them to be so open and vulnerable with their work with us, and people are still treating it like they've done absolutely nothing. I'm so disappointed, blah, blah, blah. And then saying that after all these song releases, it's like, I just get absolutely furious thinking about it. Because it's like, I understand that you may want that comeback feeling, but then treating everything that's outside of a comeback like it doesn't count is not the way to go. And the fact that people just don't respect the fact that they have been putting out music and they've been working hard to, you know, give this stuff to us, even though they don't have to, because a lot of these songs were also SoundCloud releases. They didn't have to put it out, but they decided to. They wanted us to hear it. And the fact that people are just kind of taking it and then just not even like caring about it like 2 seconds after, it's just so ungrateful.
Yes. Before we move on, can I get you guys' 2 cents on this whole matter, but regarding, I guess, fan entitlement and I guess drawing the line? Because I do want to quote this tweet. It's from Stay Blue and Gray. And it was a fierce tweet, but it's exactly what you were talking about. She did the math, or they did the math. You know, they quoted, "Oh, but it's been 2 years since their last full album." You've probably already seen this tweet. And in those 2 years, you've had 5 group singles, 15 music videos, a Korean album, a Japanese album, a mixtape, 9 collabs, 5 OSTs, 6 SoundCloud tracks, 4 covers, 2 songs for commercials, multiple writing, producing collabs. I almost lost my breath. There was no comma there. So much was already going on. And just like you said, it seems to be disregarded. But is any tips or at least just like a final say on people that you think are kind of a lost cause regarding fan entitlement and drawing the line?
Yeah. I think just once again, ask yourself, are you here because you support BTS, or do you just want to be a part of something? Because I feel like that is what happens, why we get so many people that are new armies, and then like 6 months later, they're already an anti. You see that a lot. They'll be like, I don't know, there was that one tweet that it was literally like 6 months after Dynamite, and it's like, you know, I just miss the old BTS. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, I see tweets exactly like that, and it's like their next album hasn't even happened yet. What happened to make you switch so fast? It's just, if you know the boys and you understand them and you understand their music, you should trust that. Because at the end of the day, you are here for BTS, and I don't understand how you see the work they put in. You see them, you know, going back and forth. I mean, the fact that you know, Yoongi, he filmed that side music video like right before, it was either right after or right before he had to leave for another schedule. Right. And so like that's just one example of them putting in so much work, and for you to just go and disregard that and say they haven't put out anything substantial in the last 2 years is honestly, it's not even only ungrateful, it's very dehumanizing in a sense. And that's just what I'm going to say. What are you here for? Are you here for the boys? Or are you here to be a part of something?
Exactly. And, you know, to piggyback off of what you were just saying, you know, we had talked about in our recent podcast episode about how, you know, there was this point in time where, you know, Yoongi had his interview on Weverse magazine, and he was talking about how strenuous it was to perform on music shows, and how a lot of times these idols are working very long hours. They're not getting paid that much. And so, if you're not a rookie who needs to get their name out there, there's pretty much no reason to put yourself through that much stress unless you don't mind doing it. And obviously we've seen, BTS, they only perform when it's guaranteed that there's going to be fans there to watch. And that's the only reason why they're coming back to Music Bank for this comeback, as we've just gotten the news a day or two ago. And so, when people complain, because I've definitely seen this before, where people say that BTS, their promotion style has become like westernized or Americanized, and how, oh, they're not on music shows anymore. Oh, they're not doing this. Oh, they're not doing that. But it's like, you hear BTS say out of their own mouths how stressful it can be to actually do all of this. You've seen how it overworks them. And, just the fact that they're starting to pretty much do these annual extended vacations, you can clearly see that they need that break. And they're what they were doing before just really was taking a toll on them. And so people who expect that every comeback and are saying that BTS are so disappointing for not doing it, I feel like not only is it disrespectful to what they're already doing for you, but also it's just complete disregard of their physical and mental health. And I feel like people just really need to remember that this stuff takes a lot out of them, and for you to expect it every time, especially when they have the luxury to be able to opt out when they don't have to do it, it's just so rude to them. And it makes me feel sorry, because I know that BTS works so hard, and if they were ever to think for a second that we expect them to do more, I hope that they never ever feel that way.
Right.
Same.
Right. Speaking of comebacks and newer armies, how would you describe a comeback to one of these armies, and how should they enjoy one of these comebacks?
Right. So I guess, to pretty much define a comeback, it's basically just whenever BTS comes back with a new album. When it comes to comebacks, they're always handled as like a very big event. Obviously, you have these companies where they'll have things leading up to the release of the album. So in the case of BTS, you have the concept photos, you have the trailers for the actual music video. And obviously in the case of Proof, you had that whole Proof of Inspiration thing that went on for a week, where you got BTS explaining why they pick certain songs to be on the albums. There's always that type of thing that leads up to the comeback. And then obviously you have the actual music itself being released. And I feel like the weeks leading up to comeback and then the week after the album is released is usually like the most excitement, is because obviously you have that build up, and then you have armies afterwards who are trying to work hard to stream and buy to try and help BTS achieve their goals. And so during that time, you usually want to be on high spirits. It's usually like a very exciting, very positive time. So people definitely try and keep that positivity up, so we can make sure that not only are we working hard for BTS to show them how much we're supporting them, but also to make sure that you're enjoying the music as well, because that's obviously the most important thing.
A lot of people, I think they get a little bit intimidated about streaming goals and stuff like that, when really at the end of the day, it is to have fun. And as long as you're supporting them and doing what you can, I think that you're doing the best that you can do. And so if you start to see negativity, maybe mute certain keywords, or maybe have your timeline be curated where Twitter has like lists now. So like you have certain accounts, maybe just follow update and chart accounts, just like a few other accounts you want to see, and then scroll through that, because I really don't want to have another permission to dance happen where like I fell asleep 3 minutes before the premiere, then I woke up and I was like, oh my god, this is fun. And then like Twitter was like such a mixed bag. It was probably one of the most negative energies I've ever gotten from a comeback. And so let's not repeat that. If you see other people enjoying it, just let them.
Right.
Exactly.
Because it's one thing to like not enjoy something, I will not hold it against anybody if they are not a fan of any particular BTS song. I really could not care less. My issue is when they try and project that negativity onto other people and get upset at the fact that people like the song, that people enjoy the song, and that they may relate to the lyrics, because that is honestly really crossing the line for me, the way that people try and get others to hate the song. It's like, if you want to dislike the song, just dislike it in silence in your own corner, or maybe like just something like, I wasn't really feeling the song, but it's whatever. Because me personally, if I don't like a song or I don't like an album, I'm not going to spend like 2 hours on Twitter talking about why it's bad and why no one should listen to it. That's just a waste of time. And there are ways that I can fill that out by listening to songs that I do like, or other artists that I do, whose music I prefer more. I don't feel like it's a good use of time. I don't feel like it's productive to be constantly spewing negativity during a time where it's like a big day for BTS, a big day for armies, and you see armies are trying to work hard. It's that energy is just not necessary.
You look like you got something to say, Nicole. Like
yeah. Speaking on that, there's also been a lot of controversy when it comes to leaks. Newer armies tend to not sometimes understand that kind of stuff. So what would you advise to these armies that tend to engage with these kind of things?
I feel like leaks, when we talk about leaks, I think we need to talk about the fact that I feel like for the most part, armies in particular are a fandom that really respect, BTS's work, and we absolutely do not tolerate leaks. That's like a bottom line fandom, like silent fandom rule. And that I feel is so different from what I see with a lot of, especially Western acts, like the entitlement and attitude I have seen from fans of other music artists when something of theirs gets leaked, and like the complete disregard they have for the artist's feelings, like even if the artist like gets upset about it. You have people saying, oh well, if you had just released it faster, or if you weren't taking so long to release it, this wouldn't happen. It's just so obviously it's disheartening for the artist, but I just feel like it's just so disrespectful. Like I say this a lot, but what you say on Twitter, would you say that to their face? Like if they were standing right there, would you say that to their face? And if you wouldn't, then don't say it. Because like that type of disrespect should just never be tolerated. BTS in particular, they have a plan for things. This is how they expect and want something to be released, because this is how it reflects them as artists. And armies, at least most of them, understand that. And so if we see a leak, or we see people trying to leak it, we will, report those accounts, or let other people know to avoid said accounts, because it's just not something that's tolerated at all.
Right. When it comes to leaks, I feel like definitely I've seen it in cases of, I know, what was it? It may have been One Direction, and it was either SZA or Normani, one of the two.
It was SZA, I remember this.
Yes, because I remember like I remember seeing like a hit tweet. It was like a super hit tweet, and where somebody had said, like you said, oh, maybe if you released the songs faster, nobody would have leaked it. And like that's just such a disrespectful thing to say. Because if I'd been working on something for so long and I was still in the process of perfecting it because I wanted to be really good when I put it out for fans, and then someone just like, I don't know, hacks into my hard drive and just releases it out to the public, that's terrible. I don't think I would wish that upon anybody who is working hard to make art. And the fact that people feel empowered by the anonymity of Twitter and of the internet to say these things, when you know that you would not walk up to the artist's face physically and say that to them, I feel it's just such disgusting entitled behavior. And I'm very glad that we have set that precedent in that fandom, where we do not tolerate leaks. And we always tell people, if you see any leaks, just report the account straight up, because I feel like it is such a disservice to BTS to release things before they're ready to release it. And it just shows how impatient some people are. And this is already coming from a group of entitled fans who already think that they don't do enough. And so now you've released their work early, and then now 2 seconds later, you're probably going to ask for more, right? So it just goes to show you that these people are just consuming it at such a fast pace that they don't even know how to pace themselves anymore to be willing to wait for the actual official schedules to release the music that they're waiting for.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm glad we have Nicole. I'm glad we have Nicole because Nicole is like an experienced fan. She's been a directioner. She's been into other fandoms, and I would use directioners as an example because of that massive leak they did, and they were flexing it. But the thing is that there were plenty of fans just like Nicole who were very disappointed in it. But
Right.
What are people going to focus on more? Are they going to especially people with bad intentions? Are they going to focus on what people did wrong, or are they going to focus on what they did good? And it sets such a bad stereotype up against directioners. And I just know Nicole was sitting there like, no, why did you
Not me.
Why did y'all do this? And I just can't. If you've been here for a while, why don't you understand that it's such a bad representation of BTS? We come before them. Like, we really show people what BTS is about based on us. Sadly, I wish it was just them, but
right.
People look at us, and it's just a shame. Like, and this is for anybody that I guess doesn't get this. There are people, aren't there, that kind of share leaks privately. They go, no one else is gonna know. Let me share it with my friends. But that's already your attitude. That and it just reminds me of like my uncle. One time we were driving, and he had finished eating something, and he just threw it out the window. And I'm like, Uncle, you can't just litter. You're destroying the earth. You gotta like help keep the earth clean. And what he said to an extent made sense to me. He said everybody else does it, so why would I? I'm not going to make a difference. And I guess that came to mind because I would imagine the people that do share it through DMs have that mentality of like, well, there's other people doing it. What's the big deal? But can you imagine if the 500 people leaking it were like, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't do it, then there'd be 0 people.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's a mentality thing.
Definitely. I feel like a lot of people really just the way they say, oh, everyone else is doing it. And I hate to sound like everybody's mother when they say, oh, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you go and jump off a bridge? But at the same time, it's like, if you have like all these people and everybody saying, oh, it's just me, how am I going to make a difference? Well, it's like, okay, well, if you have 500 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people who have that mentality, you're never going to get the problem solved because you have all these people thinking, oh, what's the harm? It's just me. But then if 10,000 other people are saying that, then it's not just you, is it? And so being able to set that precedent and being able to have that mentality that leaking is disrespectful and it shouldn't be done, that is what is going to curb the problem. And people who are getting defensive over not tolerating leaks, like you can already tell they have some sort of attitude. And so, that's just really showcasing how some people do treat artist music.
I agree. Thank you for clearing that up. Very straightforward. I really appreciate it. So how about we kind of turn it into a positive note? I want to talk a little bit about fandom goals, not necessarily the ones that we have, but what are some questions, for example, Nicole, that people have, especially new ones?
Right. Some of these new armies can get confused. Like, what are fandom goals? Do I have to participate? What would you say to them?
Where can they get answers?
Right.
Yeah. I think first of all, understand that sometimes fandom goals are not always going to be possible for you to participate in, just because it depends on where you're from. Like an army in, let's say, Argentina isn't really affecting the Billboard Hot 100 because that's U.S. armies and their purchases. So try and find fan bases that are specific to your country, you'll be surprised about how many fan bases there are that not only have goals for their own country, but also maybe they have local events happening. So I think it's important to follow those. And then another thing with fandom goals are we usually achieve them. There's usually not a problem with achieving them just because we grow exponentially each comeback. But usually the way fandom goals are created is looking at past, statistics, what we reached then, and then looking at our growth and saying, okay, this is what's going to be possible. Sometimes we've noticed some other, K-pop groups, once they started doing, comeback goal charts, the way that ARMYs did it, BTS chart data blueprint, the way we do it. Sometimes their goals are, some of them might be a bit unrealistic because they haven't had an exponential growth. And like, while I think it's perfectly fine to have goals and to want to dream big, you also have to be a bit realistic. If BTS, if they've been on, let's say, the Billboard 200 for X amount of weeks before, then maybe we'll tweak that and say, okay, well, let's increase the amount of weeks we're going to stay on that chart. And so I think when it comes to fandom goals, honestly, don't stress over them. You don't have to save it on your phone and check every day and see, okay, are we meeting these goals? Because also that's what the chart accounts are for. That's their job. They're watching that. And to be honest, I feel like once you're actually in the comeback and the day the music video drops, you're going to be having so much fun and doing so much streaming the music that you're not even going to be, the goals aren't even going to be on your mind that much, actually.
It's true. Once you actually experience it, then you just start thinking less about the numbers and just more about enjoying the content, because it's not even just going to be the music videos that are going to be dropping, but you're also going to have for example, fan art that's going to be dropping, and all sorts of other fan made content that's going to be really, really nice to scroll through on the timeline. And yeah, like Delilah said, I feel like it's always very important to be realistic in our goals. And obviously ARMYs are really good at doing that because we've had no choice. That's how we've been able to get BTS as far as we have been today. And so being in tune with what the fandom is capable of, I feel, is always the best way to set goals, because even if it's not something super big or exponential, and even if you're not breaking monumental records, if it's doing better than you did the last time, I feel like that's already enough. And so I feel like people just really don't appreciate the art of improving upon yourself. So, some people see a milestone and just kind of zero in on that and think that if we don't achieve that, it's terrible. And, that kind of mindset, while it's good to have big goals, sometimes, it leads to you ignoring all the progress that you've made along the way. And I feel like it's always good to celebrate each and every time that we get better at what we do. Because, sometimes you'll just see some goals and it's just so completely unfeasible. Like the joke where somebody, I think they screenshotted some ARMY from Weavers that was yeah, so next comeback we're gonna get 5 billion views on the music video, and it's 5 billion, what? Nobody's doing all that. So you can clearly see that
I have to shower.
Yeah, I have to shower sometime. I was they're a little bit confused, but at least they have the spirit.
But they have the spirit. We're not laughing at you, Weaver. Sorry, we're laughing with you.
Something I think is really important that a lot of people,
they made me feel encouraged. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand. I think a lot of people see these charts, chart goals and chart accounts, and think, oh, ARMYs are so number obsessed and they're so obsessed with charting. But I don't think they understand why. I don't think they understand the history. And I think for new ARMYs, it's important to understand that. So, when BTS was first, getting traction on the Billboard charts, you have to understand that Billboard changes their rules often. And honestly, a lot of times Billboard changes their rules because of things BTS has achieved. The Western music market has, made it quite obvious, at least to us, ARMYs that have been here for a while, that they don't like that BTS is not, following what is supposed to happen. The music market says, oh, these are the artists we want to be popular and we're going to make that happen. But BTS, they've broken down so many barriers, but in that process, more and more keep popping up. So that's why ARMYs had to learn to study the charts, learn to study to figure out what type of, playlists, how many songs between each are going to count the most, because the music industry has tried so hard to make it, difficult for BTS to achieve here, that we are trying to fill in those gaps. We're trying to make it more feasible for BTS to achieve these goals, because they have specifically there's been attempts to shut them out of the industry.
Yeah. Right.
Something I would like anybody that maybe hasn't gotten, maybe you've been around and you still don't get it, or even if you're new. If the music sucked, we wouldn't have reached these goals, even if we love BTS. Even if we love BTS, if the music sucked, we wouldn't be doing all of this. But I promise you that you can have fun trying to help them chart. I would say don't listen to the people that are aggressively pushing you to stream. It's going to take the fun out of it. Trust me when I say it. But there are going to be people that encourage you. And they not only encourage you, they help you have fun in the progress. There are people that make playlists on Spotify, so you're not listening to, first of all, you shouldn't be listening to the same song over and over.
Right, that doesn't count.
But, they make playlists for you to enjoy the songs. Sometimes it's not even just BTS in the mix, just so you can enjoy your streaming. Sometimes they'll remind you once a day, hey, at least stream it once a day. So don't listen to people that are aggressively pushing you to stream, but definitely don't listen to the people that are like, I'm not even going to try and people are just totally forgot about the music. Yeah, no. Don't listen to those party poopers. They're also going to be the same people that when they get number one are also going to be like, oh my God, ARMY, we're so strong. We did it. But they didn't.
So
3 months a day, you did something.
Like, we're not speaking French here. There is no we.
There is no we.
No.
Well, thank you. Honestly, I feel like you guys made plenty of people feel that they can participate without breaking a sweat and feeling horrible about themselves. And speaking of which, I did mention that there's ARMYs that make it fun for you to stream. But interestingly enough, we're having to come back super close to BTS's anniversary, and they're making it very fun for us to celebrate this comeback. Nicole?
Of course. Today's content. Insane. Yes. So for those who don't know, what is Festa during this time?
Yeah. So Festa is kind of what it sounds like. It's a festival to celebrate BTS's debut, and it starts at the beginning of June. Usually they announce the Festa schedule at the end of May. That's starting June 1st. They release a whole bunch of content up until their debut date. And then usually then, we always get, there's some things we usually always get like behind the scenes and like a family portrait, but sometimes we get SoundCloud releases like Dang, for example, was a Festa release. Another example was, we got, this is way back, but So Far Away, but featuring Jin and Jungkook instead of Suran. That was a Festa release.
Also, Still With You.
Still With You was a Festa release. So sometimes we get 4 o'clock. There's so many. So we can be on the edge of our seats and hopefully maybe we'll get a SoundCloud release. If we don't, it's whatever, but that's possible. There's so many possibilities. And then another thing that happens is usually there is a muster. And muster, if you look at the definition of a muster, it has to do with like a military, rendezvous. And our fandom name is ARMY, so they call fan meetings musters. And so those are usually held in Seoul or Busan, or sometimes they're held in Seoul and Busan. And BTS do a whole bunch of performances. There's usually a theme. Like one year we had a prom theme.
That was so much chaos.
No, there's so many delusional people.
2012, Tumblr.
I was one of them.
People on Tumblr, if you were on Tumblr then, they were like, oh, you don't have a date for prom? I'll be your prom date. And like everyone on Tumblr would like dress up for prom and like their Tumblr mutuals, like they would like go to prom together. It was Tumblr's crazy,
so cute.
but it was a little bit, you know, cuter. Nah, I think one time it was like a sleepover. It was like a slumber party type vibe. So like there's always kind of a theme that goes with the muster, and they do a whole bunch of live performances, like when we got an OT7 version of Dang, for example, or you know when you know there's honestly so much that happens. We might get a 3J performance. There's so many possibilities that could happen. And then also something I want to add. So they used to do like this radio FM thing, where it's like just over an hour of them just like discussing like the past year and themselves, and those are still on YouTube on the Bangtan channel with English subs. So like if you haven't checked those out, I would, just because you get a lot of insight into, you know, how they were feeling back then, and like you could see how they were then to how they are now. So like those are really important things. So yeah, Festa is just celebrating BTS's debut, but instead of just, you know, that one date that other people normally do it, they said we're going to turn all of June into a festival.
Yeah, that's like a thing that a lot of armies realized was BTS exclusive, because, you know, obviously every group is going to put out some sort of thanks to fans or just to celebrate like on the day of the anniversary of their debut. But like only BTS does this thing where they make it into a festival and have all of this content planned out in advance, and they release all these schedules for armies. Like no other group does that. And, you know, obviously, like we were saying today, we had the dance practices. That's what they've been doing for like the past couple of days. They've been releasing, you know, like never before seen dance practices of older songs. And we finally got the Am I Wrong and Butterfly dance practice. Like I was over the moon when I saw the notification this morning. I was like, period. I've been waiting for this.
Yes.
I was like, Jen's blonde? I'm like, wait a minute.
And it's so interesting to see because, you know, not only is it great, you know, because it matches up with the whole theme of the Anthology album that's coming up, where you have, you know, their whole story from beginning to end in these albums. But then at the same time, you also have these dance practices that are coming up that are also from beginning to their most recent dance practices. And you get to see the growth in, you know, not just their music, but also the way that they dance, for example, even down to what they're wearing in the dance practices. Like you can even see how their fashion sense has developed over time, watching these from beginning to end. It's so fascinating to see. And the fact that newer armies get to experience this with us, you know, I feel like that is really the greatest part about this. The fact that it's not only just a treat for us older fans who really do, you know, who really basically grew up with the older music, but also these newer fans who get a chance to rediscover it with us. And I feel like that's probably the greatest part about this.
Yeah, all those people who are like, I'm so sad I wasn't there for Butterfly era. Here you go.
Here you go. We've never seen this dance practice either.
Oh my God. I'm really excited for people that get to experience those early days, because just like you, Daisy, I didn't start till 2016. Not too far away from their debut, but still it's like being there I would imagine is completely different. And for those of you that maybe want to look back at all the other festas, US BTS Army, their website, they actually have an archive where you can go back and look at every content. And I mean like every single one, starting from their first festa. So if you want to take a look back, that's a perfect place to start. So thank you guys. I want to talk about the latest news. There's awesome stuff that comes from it, but there's a little bit of negativity that came from it. And I know you guys will help me through it. BTS got to speak at the White House.
I know. I remember when it was first announced, Daisy even posted it on our Twitter account when I was like, Daisy, wake up, BTS at the White House.
I lost my mind.
I know, like I saw her WhatsApp message and I felt like my life just flashed before my eyes because I woke up so late that day. I don't even remember what I was doing the night before. And I just saw her message and I was like, huh?
Yeah, there was a lot of controversy, unnecessary controversy, and I don't, to this day, I just don't understand how. No, I do understand because people don't like to see BTS succeed. That's just what it is. Because the amount of, jumps and like goalposts people were having about this just made no sense. Saying, oh, why Biden should have spoken to Asian Americans, for Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And it's like, you, first of all, he's been doing it for weeks because this is a month-long event. BTS are speaking on the last day. You clearly haven't been following if you think the White House waited until the last day of the month to do anything for AAPI. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And also, I think, it's so disingenuous because they might not be U.S. nationals, but, they represent the foreign workers. They represent the foreign students, the people that, they have work or student visas. And, and I said this on my Twitter account when I was recalling just some of the recent, just, events and racist attacks BTS had to go through by their peers in the music industry. Like, people think BTS are so separated from these things, but it's no, like, these are the thoughts of people that they work with. So, like, even though the United States is not their home, it is their workplace. And they are subjected to a lot of toxicity from people that they directly work with. It's not going to feel good to, communicate with these talk show hosts and, promote on them and speak with them. And then the next day they're making a COVID joke about them. Like, right. I don't understand how you can say that, like, that doesn't affect BTS. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Right. And, it really infuriates me because, first of all, a lot of the people who were against BTS, even speaking of the White House in general, were non-Asian people, not even just non-Koreans, non-Asian people in general. And that is saying something in itself, the fact that they feel like just because they've been listening to K-pop for a certain time, that they suddenly have the right to speak above the Asian community. And I feel like that is just a massive overstep in boundaries because because you look at, racism in the US, and racism isn't, they're not going to look at your passport before they start calling you slurs over here, right? And, I can say this because me being, somebody who has been born and raised in America for most of my life, even though I'm not African American, people are still not going to make that discrepancy when I'm being discriminated against. And so for people to act like this is solely just an issue that only people who live in, who were born in this country experience, I feel is just incredibly dismissive to the people who are here. Like Delilah said, people who are here on work visas, people who are here just to study, people also, I know somebody had pointed this out on Twitter, people who may actually have been trying to go home back to Asia, but because of the pandemic, they couldn't. And so there's a lot of people here who are suffering from racism the same way that a lot of Asian Americans are. And so for people to say that BTS are somehow not an appropriate candidate, when even when they're not in the country, they're still experiencing so much racism online, I feel is just so dismissive to their experiences. And it's just so strange to me how people are so willing to overlook the amount of racism that BTS face in order to just spread this narrative, this hate train about BTS. Because, once the pandemic started, BTS being the biggest Asian music act in the world, obviously they were the first target for COVID jokes online. They came over for the Grammy Awards and you had Twitter posts that got up to like 70,000, 80,000 likes making coronavirus jokes about BTS. And so for people to act like somehow BTS only experience racism when they come over here on the off chance that they may come here once or twice a year is just so incredibly tone deaf.
Yes. And then there was just like one comment I saw, and it was so infuriating. that it basically said that if they don't want to experience racism, they can just go home. And it's like, did you just tell someone to basically go back to their country? Like, do you like the tone deafness, the lack of awareness is so astounding. I genuinely don't understand how in any situation that would be seen as appropriate and not xenophobic.
Right. I just don't get how. I don't get how people could do this.
I had to reread it like 3 times. It's like, do you understand what you said by tweeting this? Because I don't think you did.
Okay. Wow. And you're right. Because none of us here are, at least from my understanding, none of us here are from like Asian descent or anything. From my understanding, me and Nicole decided to ask people that are on our team, Fave, who are Asian and wanted to know their sincere opinion. We'll keep them anonymous, but we also encourage them that if there's something for them to say, this would be their opportunity to do so. And I'm very proud of them because they always conduct themselves professionally, but always very matter-of-factly. So I do have 2 quotes mentioned by each of them. One of them was regarding how people felt that it's not that big a deal, I guess, that BTS would be going to the White House or anything like that. But this is what she said. Other AAPI artists or influential celebrities were invited to the White House last week. But of course, people wouldn't know that because it's all performative activism. Second, it clearly says the White House press release, they will be talking about Asian hate and diversity and inclusion. Both topics that BTS have faced and dealt with, like BTS have been dragged through the mud in the Western entertainment, just like you mentioned, Delilah. And outside of that, for people to say that they don't have the right to speak on it is ignorant and choosy of who they want to see at the White House. And then our other team member, she's actually half Asian. And it really broke my heart what she said, because what she experienced was not only people who are not Asian saying that they shouldn't be there. She also felt that, and this is coming from her, she was saddened that there were Asian Americans that felt that BTS wouldn't represent them well. And this is what she said. She said, as someone who is half, it really makes me feel terrible to claim my Asian side because I am very white passing. So it feels wrong to claim since I don't face the same struggles that basically Asian Americans feel like people have to go through in order to be able to speak. For people to say that BTS haven't faced struggles just because blood wasn't spilled is invalidating to everyone who has ever been the target of microaggressions or snide comments or dirty looks. And I think that's what you were talking about, Daisy. Blood doesn't have to be spilled to prove you've been a target. This is why people excuse microaggressions or racist jokes against Asians or just being straight up rude to us, thinking we don't understand or don't speak English. Things of that sort. And that really broke my heart because I think you mentioned it a little bit, Daisy. Like, I'm Latina, but I'm born in America. It's not to compare, but at least it helped me kind of understand what she was saying. I'm here. People want me to go home. I've heard it. But also my own people will tell me I'm not a real Nicaraguan because I was born here. So it's terrible on both words. But and on this occasion, my heart really broke for her because, from what she was explaining, the people that were supposed to be supportive of her made her feel invalidated.
Right.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that as well, because I also go through the same struggles that you do, Dani, where, I'm here and I'm too Nigerian to be American, but then I go and visit relatives and I'm too American to be Nigerian. And it's that, constant struggle being a child from the diaspora, where you are constantly having a battle with yourself about what is your actual identity and if you even have a place somewhere. And, even me, because I don't know if you speak your native language, but I don't speak my native language. And so I go home and, relatives are speaking in Igbo and I can't understand, sometimes I just feel like I've lost a part of that culture. And so sometimes to speak up on either issues that pertain to Black people living in America or maybe to speak on issues pertaining to people who are in Nigeria, sometimes I wonder where my place is in that, because it can be difficult, to see where my standing is. And so it can be pretty discouraging, especially for this person who you're talking about, for them to feel like they have no place to feel like they should support this type of thing, that, oh, she should rally against BTS like all these other people are. And I feel like that's a really difficult situation to be put in. And when it comes to these types of things, especially concerning the Asian community, like I said, a lot of these people feel like they're entitled to speak because of the fact that they listen to K-pop artists. And I feel like that is just so disrespectful. And if it is something that is regarding the Asian community, if you are not Asian, it is not your job to be on the front lines talking about what should and should not be happening. That should never be your place. And I had talked about it before on Twitter about how I kind of saw parallels with this, when it was back in the summer of 2020 with the whole Black Lives Matter protest, all this performative activism, and people who were non-Black who were speaking up on certain issues simply because of the fact that they hated BTS, and people were backing them because they also hated BTS. And as a Black person, seeing all these people who are outside of our community, completely removed from the Black community, and they're getting hit tweets after hit tweets talking about issues that they have no business speaking on, it is incredibly frustrating to see that this pattern has now jumped into the Asian community, and people are just not seeing it because they're so blinded by the hate that they have for BTS and the fandom that they just don't even understand how much that they're overstepping.
Right. I can relate to both, you, Daisy, and to you, Dani. I mean, my mom was born and raised in Puerto Rico. And she's not, Puerto Ricans, they come in a spectrum of like shades and skin tones. And my mom's relatively brown. I would definitely say she is very visibly a Latina woman, while on the other hand, I'm white passing. And so I see the things people have told my mom and the things my mom goes through. I also struggle, with seeing like, oh, like, these are things that happen to my family. But then at the same time, I am a bit disconnected from the language. When I speak to my family members, I don't always understand what they're saying. And so it's like, how much of that side am I allowed to speak on? Because the struggles that we face, even though we might share blood, like the struggles are still not the same. And so I think it's just really disheartening. And I don't think people understand that when they be so dismissive of when it comes to like BTS and saying, oh, well, they're not enough of this to speak on this. And it's like, well, then, who is? If you don't think BTS is a good spokesperson to speak about diversity and inclusion, especially in the music industry, then like, who is? And I think it's so disheartening to say that, oh, you have to check all these boxes in order to have experienced something. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Either you experience something or you don't. There's no like that's not I feel like there's not a lot of room for gray area. They experience this, if they have a right to talk about it.
Yeah, and one last point to talk about with this is that every person will have a different experience with racism and discrimination from any given community, the same way that every Black person will have their own experience with racism in America. It's the same thing with Asians in America. And so there never will be a one-size-fits-all spokesperson to come and speak at this event about diversity and inclusion and anti-Asian hate. So for people to start nominating just these random Asian artists simply because they operate within the K-pop industry or just the Korean music industry in general, it's almost kind of weird to see like the way that people kind of treat them as interchangeable. And I understand that obviously in some cases it's because the people that they're naming are of Asian American descent. Although even them, there will also be people who they cannot speak for, because obviously there will be a certain demographic of people who will have experienced completely different things to them. So to act like somehow BTS are the wrong people, but somehow K-pop idol XYZ is, when their experiences will never fully encompass what everyone in the community has experienced as a whole. I feel like people really just need to sit back and analyze like why they're thinking this way, and why they think that having some other person from a community who's going to be, just one person, again, they can't speak for everyone. How is that any better?
Right.
That was deep.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think a lot. I would like to say that I think a lot of armies, especially Asian armies, appreciate having this conversation. So thank you guys.
Yeah. Thank you for all sharing your personal stories. All right. So before we wrap up, can we quickly just mention how important it is to respect BTS's privacy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
A hot topic in the last few days.
To say about this. I think I think the reason why, for some reason, all of a sudden that like BTS's privacy is no longer being respected is because we have so many new armies that don't understand why there's this issue with fan site culture, because fan site culture hasn't been able to exist due to the pandemic.
Right.
And so, when it comes to, they don't know how to recognize a sasang picture. They don't know what a sasang is. They don't know what that means. And I feel like they're, when you see BTS, they have a schedule. Just don't go to the airport. You don't need to be there. I am so exhausted after traveling for several hours on a plane. I can't imagine how exhausted BTS are after doing all these interviews and performances. Like, you just don't do that. Another thing, if you see BTS in public, you don't need to share that. Like, if you share it, you could say after they left, several hours that, maybe then it's okay, but to see that they're there and like maybe try and follow them, like it's just I feel like it's basic like human decency, and I don't understand how it's just being thrown out of the window. They already, I feel like, have given so much to armies. I feel like just asking for their time to be respected is just it's just very basic, and like if you can't do that, like I don't understand what you're doing here.
Right.
And not everything's a fan event either.
I just think about it and I'm like I can understand, people don't understand what's the whole thing with fan sites, and we have a whole episode on that. It's like episode 13 or something.
Yeah, it was
about that. What's the discussion with that? That I understand. But if you see BTS in public, just leave them alone.
Right. And it's not like you have to run the other way, even though we do joke about that online. Like, oh, if I see BTS, I'm just running in the opposite direction. I get we have jokes like that, but you can just see them and just be like, oh, they're there, and you don't have to approach them. You don't have to ask for. Yeah, you can scream on the inside, but you don't have to approach them.
I don't know how people would approach them. He's like, if I saw them, I would be petrified.
I'd be frozen.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like, is this real? Is this a hallucination?
I would think security would have me on the floor.
I feel like I just have a seizure or something. Like, I don't know what I would do. Right. So like when people act like they need to go and approach them and ask for a picture or an autograph, or you just try and film them in secret, it's like, please don't do that. Like, you can obviously see that they're at a position in their career where they can pretty much get noticed anywhere they go. And so I think it's just common courtesy where even if you know that they're there, and even if they know that you know that they're there, to just let them be. Let them have their peace and quiet. If they're at a restaurant, let them finish eating. If they're, I don't know, at an amusement park, you know how Jin likes to go to Six Flags, just let him go on the roller coaster. Don't bother him. I don't know why people make so much of an effort to try and bug them when they're just trying to have their peaceful, quiet time by themselves or just trying to enjoy their day off. I feel like it's just so invasive. It's disrespectful. And obviously, this type of culture isn't just in the K industry. It's obviously overseas as well. TMZ, I'm looking at you, where you will have so many of these celebrities where they literally cannot get a moment to themselves without some random paparazzi just shoving a camera in their face. And I feel like with the growth of, you know, paparazzi culture over the years, that has really set such a terrible precedent for fans to be equally as invasive. And I'm glad that armies, for the most part, are really against that, because when it comes to BTS, you know, they already have such hectic schedules, and we understand that they need to take the time to be by themselves. And so for people to just bother them, it really just infuriates me, because it's like they've already worked so hard, and here they are just trying to, I don't know, sit down and enjoy a milkshake on a park bench or something. And here you are.
It feels like I don't know what to say, because why do we have to sit down and say don't be a stalker? Like why do we have to say that? Like it's so ridiculous. And not only are people doing this, they're recording themselves doing it, putting it on the internet, making a TikTok out of it, and expecting people to just like ha 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 when you're being a weirdo.
I think a lot of it has to do with because here's the thing with the K industry and then the American industry. With the K industry, I think what they normalize is getting up in their face, even if they're not giving them any attention. And then here in America, I could be wrong, but a lot of time what I see is fans kind of expecting and even demanding a reaction back.
Yeah.
And I think, like you mentioned, there's these newer armies that, and a lot of them did come from a different fandom. Where you do go outside of the hotel that was leaked regarding the artist. It's okay to rip open a gate and to try and sneak in somewhere to get a glimpse of them. And I think, and I hope they don't learn the hard way. I really hope they like watch this podcast or read about it somewhere. We don't play that.
Right.
We are trying to let them be human beings. So frankly, with a lot of respect, but super frankly, it's not cute. No, you showing off, that is like, yeah, I totally, actually, I've heard this before. I totally stole Michael Jackson's glove from backstage. Woo!
Oh yeah.
It's kind of creepy.
It is. It's very creepy. Like the way that people think that they did something by like taking something of a celebrity's, or like, I don't know, they're filming a video of themselves like chasing after a celebrity when the celebrity is clearly just trying to get to their car. And obviously we've seen that, for example, with Taehyung. He had come back somewhere and you could hear the people screeching in the background, and he looked panicked, like he was trying to get to the car. And people look at that and they think that it's normal. That's not normal. That's deranged behavior, bro.
That's what they should expect. No.
Right. Even in the K industry, there's been multiple incidents where K-pop idols have gotten into car accidents while being chased by fans. And I'm glad that I feel like, you know, armies, you know, we look at, you know, what's happened before, and we understand that this should not be normalized. And so I feel like for the most part, you know, we are creating this specific fandom culture where it's not accepted. But it seems like because there are so many new fans, that we have to kind of like keep having these discussion all over again.
And I think it's okay to be patient with new ones. It's probably the best way for people to learn. Like, you know, if you're being nice and they be rude back, then like that's
obviously
different.
that's
right.
Yeah, I would hope that newcomers, when someone who obviously has been around longer or knows a lot more tells you, yeah, you shouldn't be stealing anybody's shampoo bottles, like that we mean it from a good place. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Anybody have anything else to say regarding so?
I think I'm good.
Summing it up pretty good, huh?
Wow.
Okay, so remember to keep up with Daezy and Delilah. I'm sure they're going to be talking a lot about the possibility of a world tour coming up. Oh, and yes, and before I forget, shameless Fave plug, but we are currently doing a proof campaign where fans who go through all of BTS's eras will be entered to win custom Nike Air Force Ones designed by an ARMY creator.
Ooh.
And basically, we're helping ARMYs prepare for proof and helping them just get pumped, just like Festa is, by essentially encouraging them to go through their past music and post what you love, have, or remember about a certain era. You can also track your progress by winning badges as you post. And you can find more info about that below. But just wanted to give you guys a reminder. And definitely no shame in plugging in Daezy and Delilah's podcast. Just to re-mention, if you could, ladies.
Yeah. Our podcast is Talk with ARMY. New episodes come out every other Friday. They're usually, sometimes they can be between an hour and a half to 2 hours long sometimes, just because we can't shut up. We also have a segment called ARMY Anonymous, and this is when we have viewers or listeners to our podcast. They can submit any concerns they have in regards to just like the fandom culture and like things they see on Twitter and they want to talk about it. They submit it to ARMY Anonymous. You stay completely anonymous, as the name suggests, and then we'll discuss it. And I believe the form for that actually closes this upcoming Friday.
Yes, it does.
So you can go to our Twitter account, and we'll be posting about it. It's also in our link tree, and you also can just listen to the podcast anywhere podcasts are published.
Yeah, we're on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts. We're on a lot of different things. If you check our link tree, you'll see a link of all the things that we're on. And so
things I don't even know about. What's Castbox? I don't know.
I don't know. You cannot pay me to tell you what Castbox is, but we're on there apparently. So if you're on Castbox, I don't know why you would be, but have at it. So we hope you guys, if you manage to, find our podcast, we hope you guys do enjoy it. And if you want to submit anything to our ARMY Anonymous form, like I said, it closes on Friday at 12:30 p.m. EST. So we're looking forward to reading what you guys have to say.
Okay. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
if you guys have any questions regarding today's podcast, or you need a reminder of something, need more information, you can contact me or Nicole. If you were too shy to say hi to Daezy or Delilah, ask us too. We'll hook you up. Okay. But thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Any questions, don't be shy. They're here for you. We're here for you. And please enjoy Come Back. Bye.